My name is Stephen Teacher, student number 980454670. This is my Humanities 105 speech. I've struggled this week to write a post on social media that addresses the feelings I have built up towards the negative responses against the Black Lives Matter movement. I don't usually write on social media, but the way people are trying to quiet the voices of the movement has really struck a chord with me. Thanks to the reading by Paul Kivel titled Uprooting Racism, How White People Can Work for Racial Injustice, I've come up with this. Black voices are being invalidated, which perpetuates the racist system we are fighting against. The frustration and anger exposed by movements like Black Lives Matter should be welcomed and appreciated, because they are distinct indicators of racism. Who better to know and feel the pain of oppression than the oppressed? African Americans were never meant to be equals in the American system. African Americans endured slavery in America from 1620 to 1865, a period where we were only considered property. After that was segregation from 1865 to 1964, where black rights as Americans were minimalized, if at all recognized. From then until now, African Americans have had to fight the effects of systemic oppression and hypersegregation. For example, being corralled into communities that are grossly underfunded and overcrowded. The system of oppression suppressed black voices for hundreds of years, and today we see that suppression continue. Our voices and our experiences are being invalidated by rhetoric such as "all lives matter." It's so much better than it was. He was a criminal anyways, and what about black on black crime? Growing up, I pointed out racist comments in X to my friends. Most of what I got back was similar rhetoric: "Don't be so sensitive," and "you're not even black." Eventually I stopped pointing things out. I was lacking the support I needed to continue to express myself and stand up for what I knew to be right. This is why Paul Kivel's essay resonated with me. It provided some long-desired validation. Kivel says when people of color are angry about racism, it is legitimate anger. It is not their oversensitivity, but our lack of sensitivity that causes this communication gap. They're vulnerable to the abuse of racism every day. They are experts on it. White society and most of us individually rarely notice racism. Today's social media has put a magnifying glass on the inner workings of American minds. People are able to share, tweet, comment in a matter of seconds without doing research or even thinking of the ramifications of their actions. Video recordings, pictures, and encounters are posted on social media for the scrutiny of millions, and still, with all this evidence that these medias bring to light, there is a question as to whether or not there is racism and the severity of its impact. This is further confirmation of the invalidation of black voices. My voice. A quote from Kimmel reads, "Many white people have been taught to see anger and conflicts as a sign of failure. They may instead be signs that we're becoming more honest, dealing with the real differences and problems in our lives. It is not safe enough to argue. If it is not safe enough to argue, disagree, express anger, and struggle with each other, what kind of relationship can it be? We could say thank you for pointing out racism because I want to know whenever it is occurring, or I appreciate your honesty. Let's see what we can do about this situation." But more likely we get scared and disappear or become defensive and counterattack. In any case, we don't focus on the root of the racism and problem, and racism goes unattended. Far too often, the reality of black experience is seen as an attack on whiteness instead of an honest depiction of a flawed system. Discussion of privileges are seen as blaming whiteness for their existence instead of the historical acknowledgement of the evolution of this country. All the while, the root causes behind oppression of African Americans is put on the back burner, and the argument dissolves into blame and counterattacks. You can see this all over social media. White people pouring out their hearts with the same racist rhetoric that I grew up with. I don't understand why it has to be Black Lives Matter and not all lives matter. I mean, doesn't my life matter too? I see this and it makes me cringe. It exemplifies Kivel's point. Instead of seeing that there is a systemic problem and that their fellow Americans and human beings are suffering, they're more concerned with not receiving further validation that their lives matter. When in reality, it's their privilege that allows them not to have to say that their lives matter, because their worth is implied. This is the root cause that is going unnoticed. This is why there are movements. This is why it matters. If they were killed by police, someone would care and talk about how they didn't deserve it, and set posts of pictures of them in news and in their Sunday's best. If I were killed by police, people would dig in my history, find a speeding ticket, and label me social miscreant who had it coming. Kivel points out it is tremendously draining, costly, and personally devastating for people of color to have rage about racism. They often end up losing their friends, their livelihoods, and even their lives. Rather than attacking them for their anger, we need to ask ourselves, how many layers of complacency, ignorance, collusion, privilege, and misinformation have we put in place for it to take so much outrage to get our attention? I'm tired. I'm tired of having to explain myself for fear of being labeled an angry black man. I'm tired of monitoring my every move in order to appear less threatening. I'm tired of arguing about the facts. Though I cannot speak for an entire group of people, what I can say is that this rhetoric and the actions of the society need to change. Systemic racism is real. Oppression of minority groups is real. And the experience of all these groups are real. In order to change, these facts must be accepted. Kivel talks about assuming racism is everywhere and every day. That is a life no one wants to live. But the fact remains that racism is all around us. And I ask you not to take my anger as a personal attack, but rather appreciate it as a spotlight. Not everyone knows what racism looks like or feels like. But for those of us who do, we know it well. Show understanding by utilizing our experience. Shrug your defensiveness and counterattacks and become part of the solution. Stand up for the oppressed. Thank you.